Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Diamond Starks, and if you're new here, I share ministry and lifestyle content. Also, my neighbor is moving today, so please excuse the noise outside. Today, we're going to be discussing the question, which Bible translations are reliable? Okay, I'm not going to keep you waiting, so let's go ahead and dive right in. So, first, what I want you to know is that there are three different types of Bible translations, okay? The first is what we call a formal equivalence. The second is a dynamic equivalence. And the third is paraphrase, okay? So I know you guys have probably researched this topic, maybe Google search, hey, what version of the Bible should I be reading? And just the first note that I want to bring up is that the Bible was not originally written in English, right? So we know that the Bible is a combination of both Hebrew, Greek, and some Aramaic. So if you are someone who has been discouraged from reading a certain version of the Bible, unless you actually know Greek or Hebrew, it does not benefit you to discourage anyone from reading a specific version of the Bible, because there's no way for us to know the exact translation of the written original form of the Bible unless you actually know the language. One of my favorite authors, Mark Batterson, says, God cares more about the Bible getting through you than you getting through the Bible. And then I believe, like, if God can speak through a burning bush, then he can really speak through anything, especially knowing that there are versions of the Bible that are literally created for God to speak through us. So let's go ahead and dive into why people have discouraged other readers from reading different versions of the Bible and all the questions surrounding Bible translations. So diving into formal equivalences, some of these translations are going to be Bibles such as your New King James or their King James Bible, or the American Standard Bible is another version. So these are formal equivalences, meaning that the text has been translated in a literal form. So essentially, phrase by phrase, word by word, they are taking the Greek or Hebrew or Aramaic versions of the Bible and are taking those words to literally translate them into how we talk in English culture, right? So sometimes the issue with these types of translations is that because we are translating word for word from Greek or Hebrew or whatever, that can be problematic because each language has its own version of idiomatic expressions, right? So let's say, for example, I said to you, I am all ears, right? I'm all ears. That's a phrase reused like here in English language, right? So then if someone who is of Hispanic descent or African descent then tried to translate I'm all ears, they would be like she's all ears. So this is why this can be a little bit confusing. So let me give you an example. So Philippians 2:16 says Jesus was in the form of God. Now we know that Jesus was not in the form of God, but that Jesus was actually God. So a dynamic translation, being the New International Version, says Jesus is God in very nature, not just in his form. So the meaning of the text is clarified here. So sometimes even in a word for word translation, you're actually not always getting the full understanding of what is being communicated because the translator is more focused on taking word for word translations out of the original writings of the Bible. And then if I'm being really honest, like sometimes reading in versions such as the King James, they're just harder to read. Like he, thou, wenteth, and sheeth, and be, here, thou. Like it's really, like we don't talk like that here, in the 21st century. So if someone was in a Bible, if someone's first interaction of the Bible was in a service and a pastor was reading from that type of translations, let's say the King James Version, for example, they would have a hard time just understanding like the meaning of the text, and therefore a barrier could also be created as opposed to reading a translation that is more accurate, sort of say. There's no way we know 100% what's accurate. Even Bibles such as the American Standard Bible, they have been revised time over time because we are learning more about the translations as time goes on, just like how we revise history books and things of that nature, right? Okay, here's another example. I'm looking down at my computer. So John 1:26-27 says, this is the King James Version. John answered them saying, I baptize with water, but here standeth one among you you who ye know not. He it is who coming after me is preferred before me, whose shoes latchet I am not worthy to unloose. Now that sounds like, what? Shoe latchet? He standeth and what all, so honestly, this is just a little bit hard to read because I don't talk to my husband like that. I don't talk to my friends like that, right? So then if I'm like, okay, I want to kind of take away some of the just the culture that is being communicated here, what would I read? So then I would go to something like a dynamic translation, which is the New International Version. So verse 27 reads, as he is the one who comes after me, the straps of whose sandal I am not worthy to untie. So we kind of have a clear picture of saying, oh, John is just saying like, I am not worthy to even like untie Jesus' sandals. Like, who am I? So this does not mean that the New International Version isn't accurate or is not a good translation or that it's not reliable. It's just a more modern translation and one that makes sense to readers here in the 21st century. So speaking of the New International Version, this is what we would consider a dynamic equivalence. So dynamic equivalences are what we would consider a thought for thought translations. And if I did not say this about formal equivalences, these are more word for word translations, right? That literalness. So essentially these translations, dynamic equivalences, Bibles such as the New International Versions, are taking the overall thought of a message, right, in Aramaic or Greek or Hebrew, and now those are being translated into thoughts that have a more modern understanding. We would be able to gain a more modern understanding from those passages, right? So here's the problem or the point that some people may make in regards to not reading something like the New International Version. So you're going to lose a little bit of the cultural references or the word plays or maybe some figures of speech that were written in the original form, whatever language that was. And so because of that, I think there's this fear that you won't really grasp a full understanding of what's being communicated, right? But in the same sense, just like I mentioned earlier, when it comes to formal equivalences, sometimes you can also misinterpret the text because the text is so literal. So when it comes to dynamic equivalences, a lot of times what can happen is because there's no word for word translation, that leaves more room for you and I as the readers to maybe come up with our own, not necessarily interpretation, but it really leaves more room for us to say, is this what they're really trying to say? Or is this what they're trying to say? And then perhaps give your own type of meaning for that specific phrase or word or whatever may be not as clearly defined because there is no word for word translation. Lastly, I want to talk about paraphrases. Now, I know we are all familiar with the Message Bible and people be like, oh my God, I am not reading the Message, blah, blah. So the Message Bible isn't a word for word equivalence. It's not a thought for thought. It is just a paraphrase. And so these writers of the Message Bibles use what's called a poetic license to interpret what they believe was the original intent or the heart or the message behind the Hebrew, Greek, or Aramaic expression of the Bible. And the purpose of the Message is to provide a easy understanding of the Bible. So there may be times where I read something out of my English Standard Bible that I'm like, I don't really get what they're saying here. And then I'll go and I'll open up my Message Bible and I'm able to go, oh, that's what Jesus was trying to say. But because in the English Standard Version, there's a little bit more of the, word plays or things that don't make sense to me in America, like in 2021. So then I'm able to go to the Message Bible and read and understand. So the question may be, okay, Adima, what do you suggest? What should I read? My thought would be to have a couple of different translations. So personally, I have an English Standard Bible. Sometimes I'll pull up the New International Version on my phone, and every now and then I'll grab for my Message Bible. So whether you are new to the faith or you've been in the faith for a long time, I think that you can benefit and you should benefit from having a couple different versions of the Bible. I don't think that you should just have one particular version unless you are very educated and just have a really strong knowledge as to what you may be reading. So I hope that you guys are able to follow along with me. I hope this video made sense and maybe gave some of you all answers to questions that you've had as it relates to Bible translation. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.